Hello YouTube, in the past I've spoken about progression and how important it is for tonnage, but there are certain variables with progression that needs to be discussed as well. You're going to find that there comes a point where you cannot progress everywhere, or at least not at the same rate. I personally do not agree with the idea that you need to focus only on one type of pattern to be better at it, and that by doing so you will make better progress, because for me it's counterintuitive and it's counterproductive for hypertrophy. Yes, if you only do deadlifts for a month, you're going to get better at deadlifting, and you will become better at deadlifting faster than if you try to do deadlift, bench, and squat at the same time. Why? Because you can allocate all of your resources to that lift. That being said, in terms of overall tonnage and overall muscular hypertrophy, you are at a loss. You did get stronger at one type of movement pattern, but you neglected the rest. And that type of philosophy sometimes leads to yo-yo training, where you get very strong at one thing, then you focus on another thing, then another thing, and another thing, and when you go back to the first thing, you've regressed. Sometimes you went just right back to baseline. We want to avoid that. We want to have a steady progression, but you also want to nurture a stability so that you can always count on the fact that your strength is not going down, and therefore your tonnage is not going down. And that is going to be promoted by picking your battles. We know that you're not going to be able to progress super fast at everything at once past the novice phase. We also just discussed the fact that focusing on one thing and neglecting the rest is not great. So what do we do? Well, we use principles of volume and intensity manipulation to promote certain things and put less emphasis on others. And because we use programs that are flexible, we have the ability to do so in an organic and holistic manner at the same time without having to switch programs. This is why the more advanced you become, the more you understand about programs, the more you gain an ability to handle and manipulate a program that at first glance might look a little bit too Lovecraftian or complex, meaning that you don't know what variables does what, you don't want to touch this because you don't know where it affects what. But if you program and you create programs from the ground up to a certain level, meaning that you started really low with minimalist exercise selection and you crafted around that and you slowly raised your ability to sort of grow that tree of programming, you're going to gain the ability to understand everything, because every single new lift or exercise selection or variable you added, you know where it came from and you know what it replaced or the purpose it served as it integrated the program. And once that happens, you have a clear view of the program, of what everything does, especially if you do a body part split, and you gain an ability to select the movement that you want to promote on any given week or month, and the ones that you're going to take a step back on. And because the program is cyclical and you don't rotate the lifts so often that they come in and out of the program every month, you still get enough frequency on them that you never regress, which is why you never get to the point of my first example where you're only focusing on one lift. The other lifts are still going to be trained, they're just going to be trained less. This is the best way to focus on your weak points, because it's not going to be a shock for the body where you just suddenly introduce a ton of volume for a body part, which is always a bad thing. But it's not also the case of having too little volume and having difficulties adding more to that. You're going to always have a steady baseline of volume, and you're going to gain the ability to do this or this, but you're always remaining at a certain level. And if you do this, understand also that something else in the programs needs to do this. There are some limitations to that principle, but you will not be able to increase the tonnage everywhere. Something is going to have to suffer. Why? Because while body parts and different muscles do exist by themselves and they can be stimulated and hurt and damaged by themselves, you can't really isolate a muscle. There are certain parts of the body that are going to be shared in between lifts. So for example, if you want to progress on both the squats and the deadlifts, you also understand that you use the same lower back for these two lifts. It might prove to be too much past the novice phase. This is asking for injury, this is asking for regression, and it's going to damage progression, of course. So what do? Well, you can tell yourself, okay, I want my deadlift to go up because I want my glutes, hamstrings to be bigger, I want a thicker lower back. Okay, so you're going to focus on progressing on the deadlift, you have all of your hip hinge patterns that are going to boost the deadlift, that's all great. You have now created a stimulus that is going to increase the tonnage for hip hinges. You know that the lower back might become a problem, that the hamstrings might be a bit tired as well as the glutes. So what can you do? You can reduce the amount of tonnage you do on the knee flexions. It doesn't mean that you're going to lower your strength on the knee flexions. You can modify the protocol to do high intensity knee flexions with the same weight you've been using to maintain that strength, because the knee flexion is not a priority at the moment. So if it stays the same, it's all good. Same goes for the variations of the knee flexion and the movements that involve the quad. If you are fine with being stagnant on them and you are the one who are going to trigger the lapse time, I think it's the word, of stagnancy, then it's all good. It's not stalling if you're the one who instigated it. And that is going to allow you to keep progressing on the deadlift, not lose any speed on the squat. So you're doing this, and maybe here you realize, okay, I'm good with hip hinges, let's work on the squats. Well, the good thing is that now this is here. So this can now do this, and this can now do this. Instead of doing this, and then this doing this, and this doing this, because you realize that eventually what happens is that it just does a pattern like this, where nothing really improves. It just keeps going up and down, because you don't have the ability to manipulate the volume and intensity. But with the method I presented, you can. It's always going to be up, stagnant, and then this goes up, stagnant, up and up forever. So that your tonnage keeps shooting up and never goes down. So that's it for the video. Thank you for watching. If you have questions, let me know in the comments. Have a good day.